You didn't record that.
No, we
story.
didn't yet.
Thank you.
We didn't yet.
My secret's still safe a little bit. So tonight we're going into chapter 6 of Teachings for Victory, Volume 4, and this is the reply to Niiama. Okay? And as I already asked you, and you already all said you don't, so I was going to ask you if you have any idea what this is about. This is about actually the Daishonin expressing gratitude for offerings that have been given to him by two elderly, or two sister-in-laws. They seem to be sister-in-laws. I'll read all that in the background. But the bottom line is that one has sustained faith very faithfully and has received a gohonzon, and another one has also held. They're both rich girls. They're both from well-to-do families. They've given the Daishonin tithings or offerings in the past. The difference is that one has never ever had a hesitation, and the other one got freaked out around Tatsunokuchi. Okay, so this is really all a go-show expressing the truth about how the Daishonin viewed the gohonzon as the object of devotion. He never used it as a reward. You didn't get to buy one by giving him offerings. You didn't get to get one because you gave him offerings. It was strictly based on your faith, and you could give him all the offerings you wanted to if your faith wasn't measuring up. To save you from the slander, really, that was the reason. To save you from because if your faith is insincere, it's very obvious you don't understand what the gohonzon is in the first place. To give somebody the gohonzon who doesn't understand what it is at all is inviting an opportunity for slander. Okay? Now, we've gone about doing this throughout the world in different ways at different times. When I started practicing in 1973, we didn't qualify somebody, you got to go through A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and really show a determination. Somebody could come to a meeting on Wednesday, and they could get their gohonzon on Thursday. No problem at all. If gohonzon was available, okay, at that point in time, if you were in, but the gohonzon had to be available. So sometimes, again, in the Midwest, where there were no temples, you have to understand, there were no temples, so there was no Nichiren Shoshu process of bestowal of the gohonzon in 1973. Okay, Nichiren Shu had temples in the United States prior to World War II, but they had all split with the war, and then the Japanese were defeated because they weren't really there to do shakubuku. They were there to service Japanese people that were living, that were Nichiren Shu members. That lived. They weren't doing Kosen Rufu. They weren't doing what we do. Nobody's ever done what we do. That's the point.
Yes.
Okay? And that's what President Kate is trying to qualify to you. Because I can remember when it transitioned from being, would you like a gohonzon? Would you like a gohonzon? Okay, come on, let's go. To, no, they've got to learn Gongyo. They've got to have a butsudan set up. They've got to show, the determination. These things are all we're very confusing, why it's already hard enough to get people to receive gohonzon. Why are you suddenly making it harder? Okay? So this was also in relationship to a non-shakubuku country. I'm from America. I didn't have to overcome people's misunderstandings of Buddhism because they had no understanding of Buddhism. Okay? So these are all components to how the Daishonin viewed all of this at the time. He's also going to reference, during the course of this writing, another letter that he wrote to the priests of Seichoji, okay, as part of the backup to Oama and versus Niiama, okay? I want to clarify this because there are game players out there. Every once in a while I throw names out, and I'm sure people that are watching the videos and they go, what the hell did he just say that for? It's because I'm talking to slanderers of the law that do watch these videos and they give me shit directly, and I'm giving them shit back directly. Okay, so understand, when I slip names that make no sense to you, who are you talking to? A lot of times I'm talking to people that think they know something that they don't know. One of those people is a doctor in Oklahoma named Mark Rogow. who happens to be the third biggest prescriber of opioids in that state. Okay? That's all registered information, by the way. I'm not slandering Mr. Rogow when saying that. So Mr. Rogow has visited us on several occasions under several different disguises. He just did it again recently. And every time, I don't get angry at it. I think it's actually kind of funny because you're not getting me to stop, bro. And you're full of shit. And so one of the things that Mr. Rogow thinks is that Nichiren is like talking about Shakyamuni, okay, all the time, when he's really talking about the eternal Buddha. He's really talking about the eternal Buddha nature that exists in all things. Mark is an ex-SGI member who thinks he knows what he doesn't know, so he joined what he thought was another sect that would allow him to do whatever he wants to do. And he's been kicked out of that. He's been kicked out of it. He's been kicked out of everything. So he floats around and creates problems for people that utilize the internet as a source of information. And that's why I'm calling Mark out now, after this last episode that just was a week ago. Okay? And say, Mark, if you keep screwing with me, I'm going to tell him why you really left Rochester or wherever you were in New York. The bottom line is, don't come around anymore. You're wasting your time. I also wanted to clarify to everybody that when we talk about the Daishonin and objects of devotion, okay, why did he create the Gohonzon, what we call the Gohonzon? Because according to his study, he realized it was the actual correct object of devotion for the latter day of the law.
Yes.
Now, there were many objects of devotions all along, right?
Right.
Was the only object of devotion Shakyamuni? No. Most often it was not Shakyamuni. It was somebody like Amida or somebody that was, not of this earth, not a human being, previously a human being kind of a person. So when the Daishonin went to the little school that he went to, the little priest place he went to was in Awa, right? Which was a small place where he was born, actually. That's where Seichoji is. Seichoji is not on Mount Hei. It's not a major temple of any consequence. Okay? His whole remonstration with his teacher Dozenbo was over what? We just read this 2 weeks ago. I know. I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I'm just asking to see if you remember. No, you don't. Okay. His whole remonstration with Dozenbo was over this object of devotion, the fact that he shouldn't be doing Amida, that he should be devoted to the Lotus Sutra. Mm-hmm. Okay? And did the Gohonzon exist before Nichiren started inscribing Gohonzons? No. Okay? So when he went to Seichoji as a child, what was the object of devotion? Was it the Gohonzon? No. Was it Shakyamuni Buddha? No, it was not Shakyamuni Buddha. A lot of people think that it would have been or should have been or must have been, but no, it was actually Bodhisattva Space Treasury was the Bodhisattva image, the object of devotion. Okay? And you've all seen all these dudes, these images of these dudes, right? They all have different gestures and positions and poses, right? The guy that's like this has got a hand extended to Space Treasury, right? So when the Daishonin, you never see a Shakyamuni Buddha thing with a hand up. No, he's always in a seated meditation mode with his hands. So when somebody tries to say that an object of devotion with a hand up was Shakyamuni, they don't know what they're talking about. Okay? I just wanted to clarify that. So the Daishonin did not chant to anything other than Bodhisattva Space Treasury while he was at Seichoji. Just understand that. Okay? I want everybody to be clear on this fact because it's not really brought up. You have to qualify through all kinds of, you have to be challenged, you have to go through all kinds of shit to know this. Just be aware of that. All right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So now we're going to go ahead and start reading reply to Niiama. And one of the things that I also want to bring up is that in this particular letter, he's going to utilize, don't forget, the time period and who he's talking to are different than us. Okay? And so sometimes he has to use the basis of people's understanding of Buddhism, which is provisional Buddhism, versus us, which have started practicing really diligently only Nichiren Buddhism, right? So we don't have to be convinced by using provisional Buddhism as points of reference when people talk to us, right? To understand concepts of Nichiren Buddhism, correct? But the Daishonin was not in that position. Quite often he had to use something that really was in somewhat conflict, but it was a point of reference that was commonly understood. Okay? So that's really what was going on there too. So I don't know where I'm at. I'm in the wrong book. Okay, so going on to the background for reply to Niiama, and it's on page 469. All right, are you all ready?
Yes.
Okay. Background. Reply to Niiama, page 469. This letter was written in the second month of the 12th year of Brunei, the year after Nichiren Daishonin returned from his exile to Sato and retired to Mount Minobu. So Seichoji is way behind him at this point, right? It was the Daishonin's response to a letter from Niiama and her husband's mother, or possibly grandmother, Oama, requesting that the Daishonin inscribe a Gohonzon for them. In contrast to Oama, elder nun, the letter's recipient was called Niiama, younger nun. Oama had been the wife of Hojo Tomo Toki, the younger brother of the third regent. Yatsutoki Tomo Toki was the third lord of the Kasagawa or Kagasa district in Awa province, which is again a small province is where the Daishonin was born, right? Where the Daishonin was born. Pardon me. Tojo village, which later itself became a district, was in this area. Niiama is said to have been the wife of either Tomo Toki's son or grandson. Both women were widows who lived together in Tojo. Is that me going off somehow? No, it's you. Okay. The Daishonin's family was apparently indebted to Oama for some kindness she had extended to them. Now, this would have been probably prior to him leaving Seichoji at 16, though. Okay? So this is all happening before he's really announced his Buddhism. He did come back to Seichoji to do that, but that was several years later, after he had left Seichoji, right? You understand? Okay, I think he was 32 or something at that time, whatever. Let's get 16 years later. Okay, the Daishonin's family was apparently indebted to Oama for some kindness she had extended to them because she was the wife of the lord in their local district in Awa, right? Once when Tojo Togenobu, now does that name ring a bell? Tojo Togenobu. That's the dude that tried to get the Daishonin killed at Komatsubara. Also, he's the one that got all PO'd at him when he announced his Buddhism at Seichoji. Okay, he was the main guy. Once when Tojo Togenobu, the steward of the same area, put pressure on Oama in an effort to bring Seichoji Temple under his control, the Daishonin exerted himself on her behalf in order to repay his obligation to thwart Kagenobu's attempt. Now, Kagenobu was what? He was a Nembutsu guy, right? And what was Seichoji originally? Tiantai. Okay? So understand these processes of transition that are going on in the religious realm that the Daishonin is being raised in. Okay? It says, soon after the Daishonin proclaimed the correct teaching for the latter day of the law, Oama became his follower. Soon after after he came back to Seichoji, back to Awa, right, and did his announcement on, April 23rd, 1253, whatever it was, right? Oama became his follower. She was not steadfast, however, and abandoned her faith around the time of the Tatsunokuchi persecution, as many people did, as most people did. All right? Everybody understands why? Why did everybody abandon their faith around the Tatsunokuchi persecution?
They don't have hope.
What?
They don't have hope. They don't have hope. I mean, they expected Daishonin are going to be dead anyway, so they were not there.
That I would say less so much the fact that they didn't have hope as that same statement would say that they didn't have correct faith. Okay? And when they saw the Daishonin be met with such opposition that was not only threatening him, but it was threatening them as his believer, they went, dude, let's, I believe, but I don't know if I believe that much. That's what he's talking about, right? Yeah. So in other words, when the heat was on to be a believer, everybody was happy to hear what he was saying because it all made sense. It's all based on the Lotus Sutra. No problem for it to make sense, okay? Unless you're going up into opposition with another sect that's wanting to hold on to their Gokuya, their coin, right? So he's saying, around the time of Tatsunokuchi, after the Daishonin situated himself at Manobu, so this is, again, after Sado Island, she again changed her mind and asked him to grant her a Gohonzon. Okay, well, now that you made it off of Sado Island, I guess, should have not jumped to conclusions when all that nasty Tatsunokuchi stuff was happening. And the Daishonin is going like, look, you helped my family, you've sent me offerings, but you have not been consistent in your embracing of the teaching. And the question that you've left me with is, can I really extend this object of devotion? Are you ready for it yet? Are you ready for the responsibility? Because once again, why is it that Jews don't get in trouble for being Jews, but somebody that is a provisional Buddhist is not making good causes by practicing provisional Buddhism in the latter day? Why? One is not doing anything to do with slandering the correct teaching. They're just ignorant of it. And one is taking a position that the correct teaching is incorrect. Do you understand? Right. It's Buddhism. That's the whole differentiation. You're all with me, right? Right. He says, so he's trying to say to her that this Gohonzon is a source of great good fortune, but if not understood and perceived correctly, could be handled in such a way as to create slander. Yeah. You. Okay? Now, when I first started practicing in 73, and we were in the midst of all those early 7-day-a-week, 3 meetings a night campaigns. I mean, when I started practicing, NSA, we did 7-day-a-week activities, which they finally pulled back to 5-day-a-week because they said, no, we want two to be devoted to youth division. Okay, so the weekends became for youth division. They would pull them off but every other night we had 3 meetings a night. We would have a meeting starting at 6. It would run till about 7. If there were no guests, we would do Gongyo, Chantai Moku, and we'd go do street Shakabuku. So I mean, I was raised on going out every night and walking up to complete strangers and saying, "Hi, have you ever heard of Nam Myoho Renge Kyo?" That's how I gained all my fortune. That's how I started practicing. Okay, so I understood this as let's get them a Gohonzon as quickly as possible, because that was the idea at that time, was to see who will actually practice, to make Gohonzon available rather than to make it such a challenge. But the truth was that in the absence of there being any kind of a challenge or qualifier of a steadfast desire, 99% of those people quit after a month or 2. Yes. At the same time, that's exactly how I got Shakabuku, and going on 50 years later, I'm still here. I'm a street Shakabuku. Okay? Do understand that. So it's time, place, karma is really the point. All right? And what's appropriate at one time might not be so appropriate at another time. Yes. I know that because, again, this is all about receiving the Gohonzon or not. Can you imagine the consternation that the members in North America at least went through. I don't know about everybody over here. But when we got cut off by the priest, after we've been told the Gohonzon is everything, imagine how intimidating that was for many people, thinking, well, the ones with the Gohonzon got to be the right side. And the ones that just got cut off from the Gohonzon got to be the wrong side. Okay?
Yes.
That was fairly logical thinking, unless you understand Kosen Rufu. Okay? Because Kosen Rufu wasn't going anywhere under the priesthood. None of the Nichiren priesthood. And I'm not just talking about Nichiren Shoshu, I'm talking about all of the schools.
Right.
Gold in their again, I'm not going to slander them. I'm saying they were not doing Kosen Rufu, though. They were not doing widespread propagation. And when they tried utilizing, because of the change of a high priest, the access to the Gohonzon that the Soka Gakkai had warranted, had earned by making Nichiren Shoshu from the smallest group to the biggest one by far, they tried to pull that power play. We went 4 years without being able to get a Gohonzon. Did you know that?
Oh.
Yeah, that was the solution. There wasn't a solution. We were all excommunicated, for Christ's sake.
Oh.
That's when I really flipped the middle finger. You're going to excommunicate me? You don't even know anything about me. But because I'm not following a hierarchical head, suddenly I'm now cut off from the lifeblood of what's supposedly the essence of my own life? How is that even possible then? Yeah, but yeah. I had a lot of questions. I had a lot of answers. I did a lot of study. That's why I get to answer all this stuff now. It's so cool. There was something that drove me to this, okay? There was something that drove me to Daisaku Ikeda. What drove me to Daisaku Ikeda was the correct teaching that I already knew was the correct teaching myself. He's the only one saying it. Okay? So, do understand that what ended up happening was that this is all about the Gohonzon. And what is the most important thing as a person that chants Nam-myoho Renge-kyo? I mean, first of all, the most important thing is to chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, but does the Gohonzon come from Nam-myoho Renge-kyo?
No.
We've already clarified that. No, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo comes from the Gohonzon. So the function of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo is to lead you to the source, to its source, for you to, because that is your source. Okay, and so the bottom line then is that the most important thing is to know about Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, which will take you back to the Gohonzon. But then beyond that, what's the next most important thing? The correct understanding of what the Gohonzon is and the correct relationship with the Gohonzon as a result. Okay? That's all just as important. And that's what this Go Show is going to be about. Because that's so important. That's why there are restrictions. That's why Oama was not given a Gohonzon by Nichiren, even though she had helped his parents at an earlier time in life. She had given him offerings from time to time when she felt like it, when she was in the mood, when she had the faith. Okay? This is about the bodhisattvas of the earth in reality. And I've said this before. When we do these videos, we're not doing them for believers. We're doing them for practitioners. We're doing them for people that take action. We're doing them for bodhisattvas of the earth. We're doing them for living Buddhas. Okay? To realize the reality of their life. Okay, so now I'll read the rest of this and go on. Okay, it says, once when Lord Tojo Koganobu, the steward of the same area, put pressure on Oama in an effort to bring Seichoji Temple under his control, because he wanted to take it over so he could turn it into a Nimbutsu Temple, okay? The Daishonin exerted himself on her behalf in order to repay his obligation and to thwart Kaganobu's attempt. This happened while he was at Seijoji, okay, before he was 17 years old, essentially. All right. Soon after the Daishonin proclaimed the correct teaching for the latter day of the law, Oama became his follower. She was not steadfast, however, and abandoned her faith around the time of the Tatsunokuchi persecution. After the Daishonin situated himself at Minobu, she again changed her mind and asked him to grant her a Gohonzon. He refused, knowing her faith to be unstable. He did, however, bestow a Gohonzon upon Niiama. Okay, so now let's go to the Gosho. Page 466. I'm going to read the whole thing through, and then we'll go to the lecture. We'll skip the first grade part because I will have already read it. Okay, page 466, first column. I have received the bag of sea laver that you sent. I would like to express my appreciation for the offering of sea laver from Oama. And for all of you, you all know what sea laver is, but for those in the West that might be watching this, is dried seaweed, correct? Mm-hmm. The laver is dried, the sheets of seaweed. This area is called Mount Minobu. Suruga province lies to the south, and it is more than 100 ri from the coast to Ukishimagahara. In that province that is to this mountain, in that province to this mountain is in the district of Hakiri in Kai province. The route is more difficult than 10 times the distance on an ordinary path. The Fuji River, the swiftest in all of Japan, runs from north to south. High mountains rise to the east and west of this river, forming a deep valley where huge rocks stand about everywhere like tall folding screens. The waters of the river rush through the valley like an arrow shot through a tube by a powerful archer. The river is so swift and rocky that sometimes a boat is smashed to pieces as it travels along the banks or attempts to cross the stream. Coming through this dangerous place, you arrive at a large mountain called the Peak of Minobu. To the east stands the Peak of Tenshi. To the south, Takatori. To the west, Shichimin. And to the north, Minobu. It is as though 4 towering folding screens had been set up. Climbing these peaks, you see a vast stretch of forest below. While going down to the valleys, you find huge rocks lined up side by side. The howls of the wolves fill the mountains. The chatter of monkeys echoes through the valleys. Stags call plaintively to their does, and the cries of cicadas sound shrilly. Here, spring flowers bloom in summer. Wow. Here, spring flowers bloom in summer, and trees bear autumn fruit in winter. Mm-hmm. Occasionally, you see a woodcutter gathering firewood, and those who visit from time to time are friends of old. Mount Shang, where the 4 white-haired elders retired from the world, and the deep recesses in the mountains where the 7 worthies of the bamboo grove secluded themselves, must have been like this place. Climbing the peak, it looks as if seaweed were growing there, but instead you find only an expanse of ferns. Going down to the valley, you think surely it must be a laver growing there, but it is only the dense growth. It is only dense growth of parsley. Though I have long since ceased to think of my home, seeing this laver brings back many familiar memories, and I am saddened and find it hard to bear. It is the same kind of laver I saw long ago on the shore of along the shore at Kataumi, Ichikawa, and Kominato. I feel an unwarranted resentment that the color, shape, and taste of this laver have remained unchanged. That while the color, shape, and taste of this laver have remained unchanged, my parents have passed away, and I cannot restrain my tears. What a human being Nichiren Daishonin was. But enough of this. I have been asked to inscribe a Gohonzon for Oama, and I am troubled about it. The reason is as follows. This Gohonzon was never mentioned in the writings of the many Tripitaka masters who traveled from India to China, or in those of the priests who journeyed from China to India. Pardon me. All the objects of devotion ever enshrined in the temples throughout India are described without exception in the record of the Western regions. The biography of the Tripitaka master of Tatsuinsu temple and the transmission of the lamp. Nor have I found it mentioned among the objects of devotion of the various temples that were described by those sages who traveled from China to Japan, or by those wise men who went from Japan to China. You can go. Okay. Since the daily records of countless temples such as Gangoji and Shitinoji, the first temples in Japan, and many histories beginning with the Chronicles of Japan, name them without omission. The objects of devotion of these temples are clearly known, but a Gohonzon has never been listed among them because it was never established until him. People say in doubt, it was probably not expounded in the sutras or treatises. That is why the many wise men have neither painted nor carved images of it. However, the sutras are before their very eyes. Those who so doubt should examine whether or not it is found in the sutra. It is wrong to denounce this object of devotion merely because it was never painted or carved in previous ages. For example, Shakyamuni Buddha once ascended to the heaven of the 33 gods to fulfill his obligation to his deceased mother. He's again quoting provisional Buddhism in order to make the point. But because of the Buddha's transcendental powers, with the exception of the venerable Madhyayana, no one in the entire land of Jambudvipa were aware of it. Thus, even though Buddhism is before their very eyes, if people lack the proper capacity, it will not be revealed. And if the time is not right, it will not spread. This is the principle of nature. He's saying, like, this is what happens up here in the mountains. The spring flowers bloom in summer, and the fruit from autumn happens in winter. It's because of these cycles that are natural cycles. You can't produce them. They have to happen because of karma. It is as if, for instance, the tides of the ocean were ebbing and flowing in accord with the time, or the moon in the heavens were waning and waxing, getting smaller and larger with the four sizes of the moon, the four shapes. Shakyamuni Buddha, the Lord of Teachings, treasured this Gohonzon in his heart for numberless major world system dust particle kalpas. And even after he appeared in this world, he did not expound it until more than 40 years after his preaching, because it's only expounded in the lifespan chapter of the Lotus Sutra. Even in the Lotus Sutra, he did not allude to it in the earlier chapters of the theoretical teaching, the first 14 chapters. He began things in the Treasure Tower, 15th chapter. He revealed it in the Lifespan, 16th chapter. And he brought things to the close in the Supernatural Powers and Entrustment chapters. Bodhisattvas such as Manjushri, who lives in the golden-colored world, Maitreya in the palace of the Tushita heaven, and perceiver of the world's sounds on Mount Potalaka, and Bodhisattva Medicine King, who is a disciple of the Buddha, sun, moon, pure, bright virtue, all vied with one another in asking the Buddha's permission to propagate the Gohonzon in the latter day of the law, but he refused. The Buddha declared, those bodhisattvas are known for their excellent wisdom and profound learning, but since they only have recently begun to hear the Lotus Sutra, their understanding is still limited. Thus, they would not be able to endure the great difficulties of the latter age. And I guess since you do, you must be able to endure the great difficulties of the latter age, and that separates you from all those other badass dudes that are historical figures in Buddhism. You're greater than all of them. My true disciples, Shakyamuni says, I have kept hidden in the depths of the earth for numberless major world system dust particle kalpas. I will entrust it to them. Now, frankly, that's longer than Earth has existed. Just technically, I want to throw that one out there. Okay. So you can't take all this literally. He's making the point. Okay. He's making the point that these bodhisattvas have not yet ever appeared on Earth. That's really the point. Who cares where they were? All right. So saying the bodhisattvas, but they're specifically for the people of Earth. Okay. So saying the Buddhism and Bodhisattva's superior practices and the other bodhisattvas of the earth, in the emerging from the earth chapter, and entrusted them with the 5 characters of Myoho Renge-kyo, the heart of the essential teaching of the Lotus Sutra. The heart of the essential teaching of the Lotus Sutra. Hidden in the depths. It's not even on the surface of the Lotus Sutra. You with me? Then the Buddha said, listen carefully. You must not propagate it in the first millennium of the latter day. You must not propagate it in the first millennium of the former day of the law, or in the second millennium of the middle day following my death. In the beginning of the latter day of the law, slanderous monks will fill the land of Jambudipa, so that all the heavenly gods will demonstrate their rage. Comets will appear in the sky, and the earth will quake like the movement of huge waves. Innumerable disasters and calamities such as drought, fires, floods, gales, epidemics, famine, and war will all occur at once. The people of Jambudipa will don armor and take up bows and staves, but since none of the Buddha's bodhisattvas or benevolent deities will be able to help them, they will all die and fall like rain into the hell of incessant suffering. At this very time, rulers can save their countries and the people, be freed from calamities, and in their next life escape the great fires of hell if they embrace and believe in this great mandala of the 5 characters. Whoa! What did he say in that paragraph? Okay, so let's go back. He's saying that, first of all, that the Lotus Sutra specifically says this object of devotion is not supposed to even be revealed in the former and the middle day, because the bodhisattvas that will be available at that time will not be of a strength of faith that capable of doing it in the latter day. Yes. Okay, he goes on then to say that that this time, when it is the proper time for the proper propagation of the correct object of devotion, will be filled with all the shit that's going on in Japan at that time. All the earthquakes, the comets, all the weird stuff that's been happening, all right? That's making the country fall apart, right? Right? The disasters, the famine, and all that stuff. And he says that, unfortunately, a lot of people are not going to embrace it, and they're all going to die, which is exactly what happened, all right? And however, though, that with all this shit going down, and there really being no other solution, there is a resolution. It's this object of devotion that was only to be revealed now, because now is the time when we all really need it. And by golly, maybe people, now that the shit's hitting the fan, will believe it. And he's talking about again, and okay, and so the last sentence says, at this very time, when he's talking about right now, while he's writing this letter, actually, at that moment, all right, at this very time, rulers can save their countries and the people be freed from calamities in their next life, escape the great fires of hell, if they embrace and believe in this great mandala of the 5 characters. So now he's specifically saying this object of devotion that I have revealed for the first time, that it's not of my own invention. It's hidden in the depths of the, I don't know why it works. This is what we need to be doing now. Okay? All right, so he says, though Nichiren, okay, now he kind of like pulls himself back. He says, hey, I'm the one providing this object of devotion that's never existed before. He says, though Nichiren is not bodhisattva superior practices, believing that his already having attained a general understanding of this teaching is perhaps the design of that bodhisattva. He has been declaring it for these more than 20 years. So it says, even though I'm not sitting here declaring myself to be bodhisattva superior practices, frankly, I am doing everything that superior practices is going to come and do. So maybe I am, but I'm not saying I am. Okay, we don't even have to go there, because it's not important. Because it's not about who I am. It's about this object of devotion that's for all of you. It's for all of you. That's what's important. Then I got this highlight. When one resolves to propagate it, one will meet difficulties, as the sutra states. Since hatred and jealousy toward this sutra abound even when the thus come one is in the world, how much more will this be so after his passing? And it will face much hostility in the world and be difficult to believe. Or Of the three powerful enemies predicted in the sutra, the first indicates, in addition to the sovereign, district and village stewards, lords of manors, and the ordinary populace, well, believing the charges leveled at the second and third enemies, who are priests. Don't forget. These will curse or vilify the votary of the Lotus Sutra and attack him with swords and staves. All right? Everybody's with me?
Yes.
Though it is in a remote place, Tojo village in Awa province, and what's the significance of Tojo village in Awa province?
The place where he was born?
Exactly. So is this about Shakyamuni Buddha?
No.
I don't think so, because that's what he's just saying in code here. Though it is a remote place, Tojo village in Awa province is like the center of Japan, because the sun goddess resides there. Though in ancient times she lived in Isle province, when the emperors came to have deep faith in Hachiman and the Kamo shrines and neglected the sun goddess, she became enraged. At that time, Minamoto no Yoritomo, the general of the right, wrote a pledge and ordered Aoka no Kodayu to enshrine her in the outer shrine of the isle. Perhaps because Yoritomo fulfilled the goddess's wish, he became a shogun who ruled all of Japan. This man then decided on Tojo district as the residence of the sun goddess. That may be why this goddess no longer lives in Isle, but on Tojo district in Awa province. This is similar to the case of great Bodhisattva Hachiman, who in ancient times resides at Dai Zaifu, but later moved to Mount Otokoyama in Yamashiro province, and now lives at Tsurugoaka in Kamakura in Sugami province. And he's talking about these as objects of devotion that were moved from temples to different locations. Out of all the places in the entire land of Jampadvipa, Nichiren began to propagate this correct teaching in Tojo district in Awa province in Japan. Accordingly, the Tojo steward became my enemy, but his clan has now been half destroyed. Because Oama is insincere and foolish, sometimes she believes, but other times she doubts. She is irresolute. When Nichiren incurred the wrath of the government authorities at Tatsunokuchi, she discarded the Lotus Sutra. This is what I meant before when I told her whenever we met that the Lotus Sutra is the most difficult to believe and the most difficult to understand. If I present her with this Gohonzon for her salvation, because I am greatly indebted to her, the 10 demon daughters will certainly think that I am a very partial priest. On the other hand, if just as the sutra says, I do not give it to a person without faith, even if I am not partial, perhaps I am realizing her own, pardon me. On the other hand, if I, just as the sutra says, I do not give it to a person without faith, even if I am not partial, perhaps not realizing her own faults, she will harbor a grudge against me. I have explained the reason for my refusal in detail in a letter to Acharya Suke. Please send for the letter and show it to her. You are of the same family as Oama, but you have demonstrated the sincerity of your faith. Because you have often sent offerings to me, both to the province of Sato and to this province, and because your resolve does not seem to wane, I will give you the Gohonzon. But we're still worry whether you, Niiama, even you, Niiama, I still worry whether you will maintain your faith to the end. So he's making it very clear. This is big time stuff, guys. And feel as if I were treading on thin ice or facing a drawn sword. I will write to you again in more detail. Even though it is said that not only Oama regrets But in Kamakura, among the 999 out of 1,000 who gave up their faith when I was arrested, perhaps since public feeling has now abated, there are some who regret as well. These could never be like her to me. In other words, even though there are other people that want Gohonzons, she is in my heart 100%. Okay? He says, please explain thoroughly. And what he's really saying is, this is not personal. I really wish I could give it to you, Niiama, but it's not up to me. It's up to you. Your actions determine whether or not I can do this, not my determination of whether or not I want to do it. And please understand that. So he's saying, please explain thoroughly that no matter how sorry I feel for her, since flesh is no substitute for bones. Ooh, that's a heavy call.
Yeah.
Okay? Since flesh is no substitute for bones, I do not intend to grant her request because she has turned against the Lotus Sutra. And I can't take the chance. Now, anywhere in there, did he say, since she doesn't have the Gohonzon, she can't chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo?
No.
Nope. 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 Has nothing to do with that. Okay? So, this issue is not about whether or not you can chant and get benefit. Do you understand that? Do you understand that? All right? This is about why it's such a big deal that the Gohonzon cannot be taken lightly. Why it has to be bestowed on people that perceive and understand what it actually, how special it is. And that's why the changes in how it was bestowed occurred. Because initially, once it was made available for the sake of the people to quickly, who wants to chant? You all have been ruined by war. Who wants to start chanting? Same thing coming to the United States. Who wants to start chanting? Those are unique circumstances at unique times. Okay? And they stop at a point in time. Because the foundation has been laid, the mission starts to kick in. And now the bodhisattvas of the earth actually do appear. Those are the ones that got the Gohonzon. Okay? And they begin to teach others in a manner so that Gohonzon can be made available to all people, but they have to understand what it is.
Right. Yes.
It's not a decoration. It's not a reward. It's not something that you bought because you could buy it. Okay? All right. So then going into the lecture, President Ikeda's wonderful lecture as always. Everybody's with me?
Yes.
All right. Starting on page 83. And I'll get through to the beginning part here again, like usual, so we can finish it next week.
Okay.
Lecture, page 83. Each year when August comes around, I fondly recall, this is Daisaku Ikeda, he's saying almost the same thing as Nichiren did. Each year when August comes around, I fondly recall the day I first met my mentor, Josei Toda, at a discussion meeting in my hometown of Ota in Tokyo. On August 14th, 1947, I was still only 19. It was the day before the anniversary of the end of World War II. 2 years had passed since the close of that cruel conflict that had plunged people into the depths of suffering. In that chaotic post-war period, as a young man suffering from tuberculosis and feeling the shadow of death hanging over me, I was pondering life's purpose and searching for the best way to live my life. On that evening in August, that was our first encounter, Mr. Toda treated me as if I were an old friend. That's exactly how Mr. Matsuoka treated me. He talked to me about living a life dedicated as to the great ideal of Kosen Rufu, of world peace among all people. Star Trek. Placing my trust in him, I joined the Soka Gakkai and started practicing Nichiren Buddhism a short time later on August 24th. Simply put, Kosen Rufu means striving to realize happiness for ourselves and others and to create a peaceful world with our own human revolution serving as the driving force. Our own personal human revolution serving as the driving force for Kosen Rufu of all mankind. That's wild shit, but it's the truth. It's the same influence. It's not separated by person to person to person. Do you understand that? What then is the way for all of us to become happy and move forward unerringly toward the great ideal of world peace? Nichiren Daishonin inscribed the Gohonzon and bestowed it on us, people living in the turbulent times of the latter day of the law, as a means for bringing forth our innate Buddhahood and attaining a state of absolute happiness. Through chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo with faith in the Gohonzon, anyone can tap the immeasurable beneficial power of the mystic law within and become happy without fail. This is clear in light of Nichiren's teachings. What's the key word in that last couple sentences there? That last full sentence.
Faith.
Exactly. Through chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo with faith. That's the caveat. You pull that out of there and that sentence cannot be stated. Okay? It's by putting with faith in there that allows that sentence to be stated unequivocally. Unequivocally, as we all know. President Toda, while apologizing for using a simplistic analogy, which he really should because it is a simplistic analogy, but it's a good one. President Toda, while apologizing for using a simplistic analogy, often described the Gohonzon with its tremendous power, a happiness manufacturing machine. Okay? He said, we can look upon the Gohonzon as a way to understand what it is, okay, not demeaning it to this level of being a mechanism or something like that, because it's not a mechanism. It's the source. It's a different thing than a mechanism. That's why he has to apologize a little bit for explaining it this way. We can look upon the Gohonzon to help ourselves understand it more correctly as a device that employs the supreme principles of Buddhism. Much in the way, for instance, a light bulb is a device that is based on the principles of electricity. As for the purpose of this Gohonzon, a device based on the highest philosophy of Buddhism, it functions as the means for helping people attain happiness. The way of practicing this supreme philosophy of Nichiren Buddhism, therefore, lies in chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo with faith in the Gohonzon, a practice by which all people can become happy. Now, you weren't here last week, but what's the caveat to this stuff? For a couple weeks ago, again, Anika's broken her arm. It's just about healed, so she's back tonight. She's gone for a couple weeks after you didn't notice that her voice wasn't popping up from time to time. At any rate, again, what is the point? Is it about the Gohonzon?
Function?
No, really what I'm trying to say. He's talking about a device. He's talking about a device. Okay, a device would be kind of like something outside of yourself, though, right? Okay, and that Gohonzon over there that's in the Butsudan is a scroll that certainly isn't inside my body, right? We talked about this, but where's the real Gohonzon actually exist?
In your heart.
That's right. Well, I don't know if it's my heart, my liver, my brain, but it's in my life. Okay? Right? So the point is that Gohonzon is bringing forth the real Gohonzon. This is the point. Do you understand? They're inseparable. They're the same. But it's the human life, the real Gohonzon, that brings forth and demonstrates power. That thing sitting there, hanging there, doesn't ever demonstrate anything. Might as well be a picture hanging on the wall without my life activating the power. Do you understand? That's the point I'm trying to make. He says, we can look upon the Gohonzon as a device that at the bottom of page 84, first column. We can look upon the Gohonzon as a device that employs the supreme principles of Buddhism. much in the way, for instance, a light bulb is a device that is based on the principles of electricity. As for the purpose of this Gohonzon, a device based on the highest philosophy of Buddhism, it functions as a means for helping people attain happiness. How do they attain happiness? By bringing forth the Gohonzon from within their life and expressing their Buddhahood. Okay? That functions as the means for helping a people attain happiness. The way of practicing this supreme philosophy of Nichiren Buddhism, therefore, lies in chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo with faith in this external Gohonzon to bring forth the internal Gohonzon. Okay? A practice by which all people can become happy. Y'all with me?
Yes.
Okay, I wanted to make that distinction very clear. The power of the Gohonzon, that is activated through faith. And that activated power is the Gohonzon in our life. Do you understand? That is, through the power of our faith and practice, we can bring forth the power of the Buddha and the power of the law. They reside within us. Okay, that's part of life. The 3,000 realms doesn't exist in a piece of paper. It resides in life. Do you understand?
Yes.
All right. With faith, we awaken to our... What's that mean? Not like any other. All right? Our. Not like any other mission and potential. So you have a mission and a potential unlike anything else. That's why you've manifested, took the vow, said, I'll take that gig. Oh, that gig's still open here. Put my name down on the list for that one. All right? You with me?
Yes.
All right. So the power of the Gohonzon is activated through faith. That is, the power, through the power of our faith and practice, we can bring forth the power of the Buddha and the power of the law. With faith, we awaken to our unique potential and mission and achieve a life of victory as the Buddha in our present form, which means we maintain faith to the last moment of our life also, right? In that deal, right? Here, we also find the basis for realizing genuine, lasting world peace. Populate the world with real Buddhas. This is why Mr. Toda equated propagating the Gohonzon with spreading happiness. Because Buddhists make other Buddhas. That's why they go through this process in the first place. In this chapter, let us study reply to Niiama and learn about a life dedicated to Kosen Rufu based on faith in the Gohonzon. Bringing forth that Gohonzon. Okay? And we'll stop there.
Okay.
We'll start next time on page 84. And next time is like January 1st.
January 2nd, I think.
Or is it, no, it's
First.
Is it
No.
first?
it's the first.
First.
It is the
Okay.
first,
Okay.
right? Right.
Yeah.
Alright.
I thought it was the second too until
Oh,
like,
right,
yeah,
okay.
because I'm going like 25, 7, it's like,
Yeah.
it's the second, right? What?
But it's a holiday, so
I know, that's why I'm saying,
Yeah.
we have to determine when are we getting together next. Okay, it's not my choice. I can't make you come here. Wait, do you want to do it? Do you want to do it on the second? Do you want to do a meeting on the 2nd? Do you want to do it on the 9th? I would assume would be the following 7 days later, right? I don't have a calendar in front of me.
Well,
When are we finishing this Go show? Next week or the following week? And then that's the whole question, because do we not have...
so let's do it